So during the Mortis arc of Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 3, which is personally one of my favorite arcs of the entire series, though you would have to compete with the Fugitive Jedi arc since that was the final one and it really got you in the feels there. Revan and Darth Bane were initially set to make an appearance in the Clone Wars television episode Ghost of Mortis. Revan and Bane was originally supposed to be the influence behind the Sun's dark deeds. The scene was created, it wasn't fully animated, but however, George Lucas chose to delete it because it conflicted with his idea of what the Force is. Therefore, by his will, it's not canon. Now, when I first heard this a few years back, I was mixed about it. Like, I didn't get the full story about why George Lucas thought this wasn't going to fit his view of the Force. But, but when Disney rebranded everything, then I was really pissed off because, well, it doesn't matter what George Lucas thinks because Disney owns it according to them. So they could obviously put this in, come up with an explanation for the expanded universe, and then they could have justified it, and then Disney could have reworked it and come up with their own theory. So there were a lot of debates about this. Like a lot of people were kind of upset. Like some were upset, some were okay. That's understandable because they said that, oh, we want to see Darth Revan. He was the best Sith Lord we ever had. He's the best Jedi we ever had in the Star Wars expanded universe. And we all know how that turned out in the end with the expanded universe. I still think it's canon to me. Don't judge me. But anyways, um, Darth Bane and Revan were set to look like their real selves, where you saw Darth Bane eventually in Sacrifice in those Lost Missions, or Season 6 as I like to call it. He looked a lot different, but you could make the argument that would have just been a test and they just come up with an apparition by those female entities who were teaching Yoda about how to live beyond death. And they could make that argument, oh, well, you see, was a test. This wasn't the real Darth Bane that we saw. And even then, that would have conflicted everything because he's a spirit. And George Lucas had said repeatedly that a dark side user can't live beyond death. And the scene is really interesting when I watched it. It's been leaked online now. It's They say they are the ones who came before, those who have been betrayed, those who hate. Now, that really made me think like, man, what is this? Like, who are the ones who came before? Who are the others? Like, was Darth Nihilus part of this? Was because he's awesome. In my opinion, he's kind of underrated since, a lot of people don't like to talk about KOTOR 2 because of the cut content issues. But, like, I'm curious as to know what they meant by those who came before. And I get the betrayed part and those who hate. Like, Bane established the rule too, but was eventually betrayed by his apprentice and was killed. Well, that was at least in the old EU. We don't know what happened. It's clearly obvious they kept the rule 2 in the new Disney canon, but we don't know what exactly happened. And Revan, well, his death was ultimately more complicated, and his betrayal. You see, let's just say this. Darth Malak betrayed him. The Jedi captured his unconscious body, reprogrammed his mind essentially, and retrained him as a Jedi by his future wife Bastila Shan. And yeah, they tried to turn him into a weapon, in my opinion, because if you really think about it, he was pretty much the Skywalker of his days. He was the Anakin Skywalker of his era. He had a different viewpoint of the Force. He fought differently than most Jedi, and they kind of didn't like him for that. And he cared about others a little too much for many people. And he was ultimately seduced by the dark side, though not in the way that Anakin was, where Anakin cared about Padme and wanted to save her life by any means necessary. Darth Revan was manipulated by the Sith Emperor of that era to join him, and then he later broke off from him and wanted to start his own empire. So moving on from that, Revan's death is a little bit more complicated. If you've played the Star Wars The Old Republic MMO, you find out Revan survived 300 years after being in prison because apparently the Sith Emperor did something. I never played that part of the mission. I just read what I looked up. And then apparently he was tortured so much that his psyche pretty much broke. One represented light and one represented dark. His personality split, which I thought was really freaking interesting. Like, okay, this is actually kind of interesting. Like, I would like imagine if they did that with Anakin. Of like this was a repeated cycle that goes on. Like, eventually there's a Jedi that comes in or a Sith that comes in that their personality splits once every few millennia. Like, that would have been really interesting. That could probably conflict with George Lucas's view of what the Force was, but considering that the midichlorians could create life and create Anakin because of Darth Plagueis, then I think they can make an exception. Now, George Lucas said this. He said that the reason why, and also before I get to that, the part where Revan hates, that might be a little bit complicated because you could make the argument, oh, are they referencing Malik because Malik betrayed him? Well, maybe. But you also have to get that there's some form of resentment. There was, in the old canon, Revan had some resentments towards the Jedi because they were so stuck in their ways. And they tried to bash him, but they said, oh, we can't bash him. You see, he's popular with the people, and that will give us bad rep. So well, let's do this. You can stay married to Basta, even though many people in the Order might complain about this, but you do not teach them your way of thinking, okay? Okay. So that could make the argument there was some resentment that he held for the Jedi, and when his mind split, one half of light and one half of darkness, the dark side grew to hate because, well, the Jedi kind of told him to go F off and do not teach us with your morally justified ideals. And the one representing light, and then they merged, you could make the argument that after death the Force split them up again, but this time in the Netherworld. Now, George Lucas has said that the reason why this can't work is because, like Dave Filoni said this, that George Lucas said to him that this can't work because Darth Revan and Darth Bane were dark side entities. Therefore, they can't live beyond death. Which confused me because in KOTOR 1, I think it was Ajutan Paul, I can't remember, it's been so long since I played that game, you visit his tomb and you see his spirit. So, that was clearly established that you could see spirits of the Sith. And that was never explained, but clearly you could say that, wait, so spirits of the dark side can't live beyond death. And then you also have to take into account Emperor Palpatine kept his spirit alive and transferred to a clone body in the old EU, so they can make that argument. So, really, what was George Lucas trying to say? Like a Sith can't become a Force ghost. That kind of confused me because there's a Juten Paul, there's all these Force spirits that were in the EU, like Exar Kun, Marco Ragnos, and Jedi Knights Jedi Academy, because were their spirits locked away? And there's also Exar Kun, remember him? Like, he came back thousands of years later after his death and attacked the new Jedi Order Academy. So, really, George Lucas's way of thinking doesn't really make sense now that I think about it. So, if they were to, so some people might say, oh, because George Lucas got senile around this time, so basically what he says doesn't matter. Though I will say that would I have personally wanted to see the scene? Yes and no. Yes, because it would have been an awesome fan service moment and would have given us an aura of mystery. But at the same time, to make them be the reason why the son became what he was, no, that's mixed for me. because you could they could have foretold the whole religious dogma of the old Sith ways and of the old Jedi corrupted everything, like the Templars and Assassins in Assassin's Creed, how they fought over the refuge of the original founders, the creators of humanity. So they could do that, but but I'm glad they didn't. But the other reason why I'm glad they didn't put this scene in is because the son being advised to do all these actions, it kind of limit. Like you do feel guilty. Like you kind of do feel guilty why he was told to do this, because well, you're already kind of guilty because he's already expressing anguish over what he's done. Like he feels some form of guilt. He just can't seem to control himself. Like okay, when the father dies, and he says to Anakin that I believe this. I haven't watched the Mortis episode in a long time. That he brung balance. So wait, balance required that the son, the daughter, and the father all had to die. Um, sorry, but where did that even come from? What were they trying to say that the old Jedi Order and the old Sith ways had to be destroyed to build up new ones in order to end this previous cycle of chaos because everything was thrown out of whack? Like I made this in my Chosen One video, and that was really hotly debated between people who commented. So what were they trying to say? Because George Lucas's way of thinking contradicts what happened in the EU, and at the same time, it, like to make the sun be manipulated by these two forces really doesn't really help the sun's case, because the sun is supposed to be more powerful than them. Like you can make the argument that Bane and Revan are more intellectually powerful than him, therefore they could beat him and control him. You could make that argument. But here's the thing. The son doesn't have any rational thought. He's like Dragon Ball Z's Broly. He just doesn't care. Well, okay, not like he has some form of intelligence. That wait, that's not the best description, because he does kind of care. He showed that he cares about the daughter and his father, and you could also make the argument that he probably cared about his mother, because in the old EU, Abeloth, when she was human, was the mother who helped the father to keep the daughter and son in check. But I'd be on that all day. I could make that in a future video. But nonetheless, this whole the dark side users can't, the dark side Sith cannot go ahead and do this because reasons, though evidence suggests that it contradicts everything else, because Kotar 2 shows a Sith seeing a Sith after death, Exar Kun after death, Marco Ragnos after death, uh, Naga Sadao after death. Yeah, like, and Freedom Nad. I just remembered him. Like their spirits showed them after death, so why couldn't Revan, the dark side version of Revan, and Darth Bane show up to like control the sun? And then there was this one mystery that I honestly don't know what they meant by that. Had this been implemented, this would have really caused a problem for me, since Disney canceled the series, and therefore it would have been left unanswered. They mentioned that there's a force that would control the universe, not the galaxy, the universe, and they say the Chosen One is the key, Skywalker. And I'm wondering, wait, who? What force? Um, is there a force trying to control the universe? Like, I know it's not the Yuuzhan Vong, because I'm still thinking in the what if if it was under the Legends banner, you had to think. So wait, are they saying the Yuuzhan Vong? No, it can't be them. They lost their connection to the Force, and I don't think that was ever explained why. But it added a mystery to me. So is it a threat that was never seen, that was going to be explored years into the expanded universe, like probably in the Legacy era? Because Darth Krayt was dead, so might as well. And the one Sith were defeated and stopped by Solo. So They could have done an antagonist there, where the Sith and the Jedi had to buddy up for one final confrontation against this force that wants to control the universe. Though that would probably be very difficult to do. So I was confused when I first saw that scene. Like, who's the force that wants to control the universe? They never explained that. Like, they say they don't know, but and I get it because Revan and Bane, while they're spirits of the netherworld, um, they are technically still human. They were human when Darth Bane's an alien. Let's just say they had a form of humanity, so they weren't completely all knowing. They just probably saw manuscripts and studied all this, and then they discovered it, but they didn't know the full story of it. So that would have all been interesting, and at the same time conflicting with George Lucas's philosophy. But it would have made for an interesting storyline. Like, maybe they could have done an expanded universe novel showing Revan and Bane after death. Like, maybe Revan was split in two again because his dark side wanted to live after death, and and the light side wanted to find peace. Just like, back when they were still alive, and now they're conflicting with each other in the another world. And Darth Bane has tried to figure out a way how to live after death. And and okay, now I just thought of something. Okay, sorry. I just thought of something. Couldn't they make the argument that Mortis, because it's so deconnected into the Force and kind of ties with the Netherworld, they could have just put them there? Who probably they could have used the Force power of Mortis to show, because Qui-Gon Jinn shows up and he's able to show physical form, well, spiritually, but still physical form, and talk to Obi-Wan directly. Whereas in season 6, he's just a spirit where you can't see him, but in this, you see him in physical spiritual form. Couldn't they make the argument that maybe the dark side Sith of the past are contacting the sun through the other side, yet they're still bound to it, but they're connected to Mortis? And they go ahead and contact him to tell him that this is all happening, that the Chosen One will be the thing that ends the Sith era. And Qui-Gon Jinn, he didn't know what the hell was going on after he died, apparently. That kind of confused me. Like, he's clearly shown in the expanded universe that he was watching, but that's a completely different subject. So, yeah, would I have loved to see this scene? Absolutely, just for the fan service and the mystery. But it would have been confusing, left a lot of open stuff to be left open, and it would have made for some interesting Netherworlds expanded universe storylines. Like, we could have seen they talk about that there's another world in the Force, but we never see it, I believe. I could be wrong. They mention it, the Force spirits mention it, but we could have gotten a preview of what this Netherworld looked like, because that would have been interesting to me, at least. Though I could understand if they wanted to keep that secret, like, that's left open to interpretation of what that is. But yeah, like I said, would have been really curious as to know where this would have gone if Revan and Bane were in this episode. It would have changed a lot of things, opened a lot of eyes, made a lot of people think about, like, what are they talking about? What are they planning? What's this force that wants to control the universe? How is Skywalker the key? How is the Chosen One supposed to, like, control everything? Like, the Emperor did that for like 20 years and then failed miserably. So I was like saying, Return of the Jedi would like to say something. So, like, is it like what would have been in Mass Effect 3 about dark matter when the Reapers were trying to stop it for some reason, but dark matter would have consumed everything? That was apparently a plan. One of my friends told me about that. So, could you have made the argument that, like, that maybe this force would have been a response from the force itself to destroy everything in its path, because they feel like humanity, like the galaxy, the universe has abused their power, formed religious dogmas, and now the Force is either going to take it away or rid the universe of all Force users who abuse it. That would have been interesting, but and like, but Vader prevented that. But Anakin and Vader technically prevented that when they died and took the Sith and Jedi eras of old with them. So that could have been made an argument. So that all would have been interesting. So, yeah, I'm just rambling now. I'll end it here. Anyways, those were my thoughts on the Darth Revan and Darth Bane scene back into the Sun cut. This was Neo Reality Entertainment. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and donate. Stay tuned for more.